Mr. Rex ShadesEagle, you have the honor of and it came out of nowhere that we put a little piece on TikTok, like a little that went viral. I mean, we're talking like 3.6 million views. What do you think about that, Rex?
First of all, that's the first time I've ever been involved in a viral video. So,
Me too.
and it's funny because I didn't know about it, and then I saw Sandy. I saw
Yeah.
Sandy's Facebook post about you guys' first viral video. So I just went to go look to support it, and I was like, "Oh shit, that's me."
Yeah, I was.
I mean, you know this. There was a lot of hate on that video.
Uh-huh.
There was a lot of people throwing shade, and
Throwing shade to Rex
yeah,
ShadesEagle.
yeah. And the funny thing about it is the reason for their hate was because they Googled stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they Googled like, oh, how long can a person stay awake? And it's like with your record's like 11 days. And it's like, well, I don't know too many junkies that are calling up Guinness being like, hey, I'm about to go on a run. You want to come get this shit on video? This is going to be exciting. You know?
So I have some of the TikTok comments, and I'd love for you to just respond right off the top of your head, because I was right in there next to you. We were battling off all the haters and responding to them. But here's the first one, and you just addressed it. You weren't up for 31 days.
There's the possibility when I was riding around town on the bus or at brief moments that I might have nodded out.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is I didn't lay down and go to sleep or sit down and go to sleep for any length of time, more than a few minutes, for over a month, 31 days if you want to count the longest month. And I know personally people who've done it with me, because I've almost done that again. Like in the mid 90s when I was living in Boulder, crank made a really big comeback.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't call it all the stuff that they call it now. Like it was either crank or it was meth.
Mm-hmm.
And meth was like the clear stuff that nobody really liked because you do a little bit and you'd be up for 10 days. Like we like the stuff that like the bathtub shit that the bikers made, the old probe dope or the old peanut butter shit. And like, but we would stay up for weeks at a time. When I stayed up for those 31 days, I was doing the meth. That's what my aunt was making. So I was mixing because she had several different types that she cooked up. And she wasn't my real aunt. Everybody just called her Aunt Carolyn. I tried to sleep, man. They kept telling me, they're like, oh, don't worry. Eventually you'll do enough that you'll just crash.
Right.
You'll overamp.
So how do you know it was 31 days?
Because my benefits.
That's a great answer. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Back in the early 90s in Vegas, they had GA, general assistance, and it was for disabled people, but you didn't have to be on disability. Like it was a city thing, or like a Clark County thing, or a state. I don't know. I don't know where it came from. I just know that once a month I would go. I mean, twice a month I would go and I would get a check for $350 because I was a drug addict. And it was their thinking that if we just give them money, they won't be committing crimes, which worked for me because I knew every 2 weeks I could re-up. So like right before I left in September of 1993, they changed how they did it. Instead of getting $350 twice a month, you now got $650 once a month. I went and got my check on the 15th of October because that was my day. And I left Las Vegas after having that paranoid delusion about the cops coming and all of that.
Yeah.
I left Las Vegas. That was November 16th.
And then you went to sleep thereafter?
Yeah. Well, I crashed in that dumpster.
Oh, there it is.
At the AMPM, those dudes that worked there, they let me sleep for a couple of days.
Oh my gosh. So here's another comment.
All right.
They basically said this, and I read them, and they're still posted on the Recovery Matters podcast TikTok feed, that you lied about being up for 31 days. What else have you lied about in your story?
The reality, and here's the reality. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I mean, I'm kind of an asshole because I think that everybody needs an asshole in their life. Like, not a dick, not a dick. Nobody wants to be a dick,
Uh-huh.
but an asshole. Someone who's willing to say it how it is,
Right.
and not pull punches and just be frank.
I relate
And
to that, unfortunately.
the reality is, I don't give a fuck whether you believe me or not. I lived it. I have my best friend Jim, my friend Gage. Like, these are people you can find me on Facebook. You can find my friends. Look up Jim. Look up Gage. Look up Lenny Duncan. Look these people up and hit them up. Be like, hey, man, did you guys used to stay up for weeks and months at a time? And they'll be like, fuck yeah, we did. Dude, me, Spirit, and Gage stayed up for 4 days on cocaine.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so I don't care. I had a death wish, but was too much of a coward to actually pull the trigger because I was raised Catholic. So in my Catholic mind, if I killed myself, that's the one unforgivable sin that I can ever be redeemed from, right? So I was committing suicide on the installment plan.
Yeah.
I had a hope that each one of those shots would do the trick. You know what I mean? And the kids, the people who are making these comments, if you go and look at their pages, because, I always investigate who's talking shit to see if I really want to put energy into it or if I just want to talk shit back, 'cause sometimes I just want to talk shit back. I'm not perfect. You know what I mean? I'm human. And some of these people, they're like 18, 19 years old, and I engage them and I'm like, how much experience do you have with drugs? And they're like, oh, I did meth for 2 years. Like, dude, I probably lost more drugs than you did in those 2 years, and that's not a proud statement. Like, that's how fucked up I was, And so I love them. I pray for them, and I'm trying to do bigger things that I think that God has called me to do. Like my bike ride this summer,
Right.
we'll talk about that.
We'll definitely get into that for sure.
My journey began, this recovery journey, 9.5 years ago with me taking my own life, because I finally got to the point where I was like, I spent a month thinking about it, meditating. I would go up on Settlers Park every single day. I'd do just enough dope so I wouldn't be sick, shitting all over myself. I'd go sit up on the mountain and I'd smoke pot and I would meditate and I would pray to God. Is this the path that you have for me? Is this okay? And nothing about it felt wrong. Now, and it's because I finally got so low, I didn't think there was any other way I was ever going to stop. And so now I have a little bit of a platform, not a big one, a little tiny one, but I'm trying to use it to spread positivity. And here's the thing: I'm a pastor. I'm a Christian. Definitely not in the normal sense of the word. What did Jesus say? He said it's easy to love those who love you. The real trick is loving those that hate you.
Correct.
And it also says all throughout Scripture that if you keep doing that next right thing, then the principles and the powers of this earth are going to attack you. They don't want us doing God's work. They want us, Satan, whatever you want to call it, the negative powers in the universe, the negative energy, whatever. It wants us strung out, dependent on drugs, dependent on a system that perpetuates misery.
Yeah.
And so when we step into recovery and we step into the light of God and we cast that demon aside and we shake that monkey off our back, it wants us back. I have a sponsee who just recently relapsed, and he was like, within a week. I'm like, it took you that long to get back to where you were? I'm like, the whole time, so this is my analogy about recovery and addiction. I've spent 15 years in prison. Now, there's a lot of guys who go to prison just to get in more trouble and do this and that, but I saw that as God, because I've always believed in God. I saw that as God giving me an opportunity to at least try to get my shit together, to get my body right, to get physically healthy. So what do guys do when they go to prison? They work out. They read self-help books. They do everything they can to improve themselves. So I told him, I was like, think about that in the terms of your addiction. When you're in recovery, you got your addiction locked up. I'm like, so what's it going to do? It's going to wait, and it's going to get stronger, and it's going to work out, and it's going to find more ways to manipulate and creep its way into your life. I'm like, so of course, when you relapse, I'm like, you got that first couple of days, we're like, yeah, man, this is fun. Holy shit. Why did I stop doing this? And then bam, a week later, you're maintenance. I do the things that I need to do every day to maintain my spiritual fitness. I pray, I go to meetings, I work with others, I be of service. And this isn't just things that I do in the recovery community. You know, it says that we practice these principles in all of our affairs. So that means that I need to show up and be a good husband, be a good dad, be a good neighbor, be a good employee, be a good client. I hate to keep going back to it, but like, you know, the Pharisees asked Jesus, they said, what is the greatest covenant? What's the highest command of all? And he said, love God with all your heart, strength, mind, and soul. And he says, but second to this
is love others.
Is love each other as you love yourself. And that's a hard fucking task.
Yeah. Once you get that done, all the rest is, you know, you worry about all the rest. Get those two right. Love God, love others.
So back to the comments, you know, like at first I was hurt, and then I was angry, and then I was reactive, and then I prayed about it. You know, and now, like Taylor says, haters gonna hate.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and like Kevin Hart says, if you ain't got haters, then you ain't doing something right.
Here's the other one that we'll talk about. The one that always kind of got me going was the people that were so sure that the record is 11 days.
Oh man, that cracks me up, because these are people who have no frame of reference,
right?
You know, and you got to understand, like, this is what they don't understand. I could be a fucking poster child for Gen X. You know what I'm saying? My parents left me with my grandparents. My grandparents got divorced. My step-grandmother abused me and then kicked me out when I fought back. I was a latchkey kid for the first 12 years of my life, and then I didn't have a key or a lock to go in. You know what I mean? Like, I was a punk rock, headbanging, homeless junkie. You know, I watched this TikTok today. This guy was like, when I grew up, I want to be an addict or an alcoholic. Said no one ever. That's not true. I remember when I was like 13 years old, I was getting high. And there was this PSA commercial that showed this person running in slow motion. They were wearing a white t-shirt. And it says, and this little girl's voice says, I want to be a track star when I grow up. And then you see this hand grab the back of dude's shirt, and it's a cop hand. And it says, no one ever says, I want to be a junkie when I grow up. And like, me and my friends were like, I don't know, it's not that bad. You know, like, we're enjoying it. You know, like, that's the fucking mentality that I had. You know, like, my daughter, who was 14 years old when she did it, stayed up for 9 days with no drugs. Just to see if she could break the record.
Right.
That's true, because she had heard me telling this story to somebody else. She looked it up. She's like, here's the record. I was like, talk to your relatives who have done drugs, things like that. Your dad and your uncle. She's my stepdaughter.
Yeah.
You know, like, even her, after doing 10 minutes of investigation, was like, oh yeah, my Uncle Jason, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Like, he knows people, or, you know, like, these are children. They're children, or they're people who lived in their nice little addict box, you know what I mean? Where they stayed in their hometown and they disappointed their loved ones and they created some wreckage. Then they stopped. And now they think that all addicts are like that. People can only draw off the references that they have from their own personal experience. Like, we can see things in movies, like documentaries, and still really not have a frame of reference for what they went through. You know what I'm saying? Like, until you've lived it yourself or experienced it yourself, or at least been around it, then it's really easy to throw shade on other people who have lived it and say that they're full of shit or they're lying. You know, I was a liar my whole life. Like, I'm kind of like Christopher Walken in True Romance. You know, my dad was the king of liars. I could tell, I knew people's lying tells by the time I was 12 years old. I could tell if you were lying it to me just by looking you in the face. I spent a good career as a drug addict and as a homeless person and as a convict, lying, cheating, manipulating, doing everything I could to get things my way, to have you see things my way so that you would be sympathetic to my needs. Or at least enough to fucking give me what I wanted to get rid of me. Where did that lead? It led me to a bathtub with 2 grams of heroin flowing in my system, dying because I hated myself. I hated who I was. I thought God hated me. I thought everybody else hated me. But more importantly, I hated myself. I'm not that person today.
Mm-hmm.
I fucking love myself. I'm the shit. Like, I look at the things that I've been through and the things that I've survived, and I listen to other people in recovery and I hear their stories and I listen to speakers. And like, it finally dawned on me within the last year. Like, it really hit me. It's like, holy shit, man, you've been through a fucking lot. Like, you've been through way more than your portion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they say, the truth is stranger than fiction. Like,
Right.
I don't have to lie. My story, like, and this is the funny thing about my life. And if you ever meet anybody who's known me for more than 5 or 6 years, they'll tell you 90% of the things I do in my life, I do because I think they'll make a cool story later.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if life was a Dungeons and Dragons game, I would be a bard.
Yeah.
I'm a storyteller. That's what I do. That's why I have a young adult sci-fi fantasy series that me and my wife are writing. It's why I wrote a book. It's why I come on these podcasts, because I feel that there is power in our story. And if I'm coming on here saying, hey, man, there's a better way out than taking your own life. There's a better way out than doing drugs. There's a better way out than drinking. There's a better way out than doing what you're doing that brought you to the rooms of whatever rooms you're in. And then somebody does a little, digs a little bit and finds like, oh, he's fucking lying.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't really kill himself. He didn't really turn himself into jail. He didn't really do that. Then all of my credibility is shot.
Right.
It's shot. And then what value do I have?
Right.
Then I've wasted all of this opportunity and blessing that God has given me in my life to be able to sit here now, almost 10 years clean and sober, articulate. I'm still able to critical think. I'm not a babbling idiot like some of these people who got web brain who like, it's not their fault. They just don't know no better. You know what I mean? Or like some of these tweakers that I know whose minds are so spun that they just can't comprehend reality.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah, that was never, I think you're very credible. And the point about the people saying the record is 11 days, they Google the record for staying awake, and that's without drugs.
yeah.
So I mean, but you're talking, who knows what the record is with drugs? I mean, it could be, well, who knows? Talk to me a little bit. You mentioned your bike ride. You're going to go from Seattle to Miami?
Right. So the ride is called Ride for Life USA. And the number 4, not FOR. Ride number 4, Life USA. When I wrote my book, I published it in January of 2022. And then
what's the name of the book?
No Love.
No Love.
ANOW.
Can you get it? Can you get it on Amazon?
You can, absolutely. Yeah, it's No Love, a memoir. And in the months leading up to its publishing, a release or whatever you call it, I did a bunch of podcasts to promote it, and I made some friends with some podcast hosts, and they're like, dude, you need to do a podcast. They're like, seriously, like they're like, we read the book, like there's so much more to the story that you just need to do a podcast and continue on. So we started a podcast in February called No Love, the Memoir Continues. And so I started promoting it. And I was really reticent about TikTok because I have teenage daughters. And they live on TikTok. So I was really nervous about getting on it because I was kind of like these politicians who are trying to get it banned now. Like, oh, it's killing our children. It's da-da-da-da. They're blah, 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 blah. It's Chinese information farming. And then I got on TikTok. Within a month, I had about like 1,000 followers just from talking about recovery stuff and promoting the book. And then I really started talking about recovery, and it was like May or June of last year. I shot up to about 13,000 followers, like almost overnight. Like it was within a couple weeks. Like I was like, holy shit. And but I started getting all these videos at the beginning of June, and I was already aware of the 988 campaign for the suicide hotline. It went from a big all 1-800 number to now if you or anybody's in trouble, you just call 988. Someone will answer, or you can text talk to 988. I started seeing all these TikToks just about men who were suffering silently inside, like I was, because I didn't think that I could cry. I didn't think that I could show emotion. I thought that showing vulnerability was weakness. And if you show weakness, then you're going to get preyed upon. And you know the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, what's the male mantra? Nobody cares, work harder.
Right.
You know, that's what we're told our whole lives by our coaches, by the male figures in our lives, by our fathers, by our grandfathers. You know, men are here to protect and work. And that's all we're good for.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started seeing all these statistics about suicide. That on average in the United States, we lose 130 individuals to suicide every day. 80% of that number is men. 70% of that number is middle-aged white men. And this hit me really hard because I was 39 years old when I took my own life.
Mm-hmm.
So I started really looking at the numbers, and I started like trying to like put things into perspective. I like things in perspective. I think perspective is the guiding force of our lives. How we perceive things is how our world evolves around us and how it unfolds around us.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that when I did the math, that we lose more Americans to suicide every 54 days than we did American soldiers in 27 years combined Iraq-Afghanistan wars.
Mm-hmm.
That's perspective. And something like 92% of Americans have thought about themselves or know somebody directly, like in their immediate circle of influence, who has attempted or had suicidal ideology. That means almost 100% of Americans have either thought about or know somebody who's thought about killing themselves. That's insane. But you can also see the statistics and studies that show early intervention, outreach, education, mental health availability, mental health services availability. These things can greatly reduce that number. I reached out to AFSP, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, local chapter here in Colorado. And I spoke with their representative, actually the director. His name is Michael Barber. He's a great guy. He was like, well, you know, we can always use fundraisers, you know, and the thing that I like about American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, they are the biggest advocates and donors to veterans funds, veterans suicide funds, to they do all stuff all over the country, and 80% of the money that they bring in goes toward education, outreach, services. Only 20% goes to administration costs. I was like, well, this is the organization that I want to work with. So we reached out, we partnered up, and I talked to my wife, and I was like, well, I've always wanted to ride my bike across country. I Googled it, and I was like, what are the two furthest cities in the continental United States? And Seattle and Miami. So then I Googled, what's the world record for the longest charity cycling event? And it came up with the Texas 4000, which is a annual charity ride from Austin, Texas to Anchorage, Alaska.
Wow.
4,687 miles. And the reason that I want it to be so long is because I'm trying to do the most to inspire others to do the most. I am a 49-year-old, 9.5-year clean, recovered 27-year heroin addict who has had HIV for 22 years. I have degenerative disc disease in my back. I have arthritis in my elbows, my wrists, my fingers, my knees, and my right hip. I'm a fucking broke ex-junkie.
So you know how similar our stories are? That back in 2010, when I was recovering from stage 4 cancer, you know, I had been about 20 plus years in recovery. God spoke to me too and said, I want you to hike the Appalachian Trail. So in 2015, I completed a journey of 2,189 miles. And I wrote a book called Continue, Right Click on the Appalachian Trail. Right Click was my trail name. But there's a lot of similarities to having God speak and then take on this endeavor. When do you plan on leaving? When do you plan on starting?
May 10th.
Okay.
And instead of taking 3 months and leisurely riding across the U.S., it's my goal to complete the entire journey in 59 days. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that.
100 miles a day.
100 miles a day.
Yeah.
And I think that the biggest deterrent to that is going to be the mountains on the East Coast.
And weather could be.
Weather could be, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there's all kinds of things. There's headwind.
So if somebody wanted to contribute to help you with this, what's the best way for them to do it?
NoLoveFoundation.org.
Mm-hmm.
Right there at the top on the homepage, there's a little thing to either buy tickets or donate. The engine that we're using, the smallest donation allowed is $5.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like I just made a TikTok about this. If all of my followers donated $5, that'd be $75,000. That would be $70,000 going to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, and so that's where I'm at now. This ride though, I mean, it's
So it's soon.
soon, 35 days.
All right. So this is what as we wrap up here, if CCAR, the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery, we will match, and this is a challenge to anybody, anything up to $1,000. We'll put $1,000 in, and as soon as you raise another 1,000, we will match that completely.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so just so that you know that, and it's here posted and all that, not a problem. I just think your story is so inspiring, and I know what it's like to do these long treks and these long journeys, and mine took 189 days. So, but while you're out there, I think if God called you to it, he'll see you through it, right? So enjoy the ride. It's not just the mission, it's the journey. It's just not the destination. Enjoy the ride. You're out there for a reason. I believe in you.
Thank you, Phil. Such a good time.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Yep. God bless.
Bye.